Everyone. So today we're going to be talking about business proposals and also argumentation in general, what that looks like in a business writing or business communication context. Some of this is going to be going over things that we've already gone over in previous videos. Some of it's going to be going a little bit more in depth about things, but in any case, it's going to introduce the genre of the proposal to you and kind of give you some strategies for how you might go about making your argument as we enter into the new major assignment. So, whereas a SWOT analysis, for example, what you just produced, a report of that kind, the purpose of that is to inform. The clear purpose of a proposal is to persuade. There's no reason for you to write a proposal outside of this purpose. So your main goal in this is to argue for a particular way of addressing a problem. In our assignment too, and you will come across this in many different business contexts, especially in a kind of unsolicited proposal, which I'll get to in a bit. But whenever you're working in this kind of genre, even arguing that there is a problem in the first place that needs to be solved is also kind of an added element of persuasion. So there's kind of two acts going on whenever you're writing a proposal. You are persuading your audience that there is an issue and that it is this issue in particular, and you're persuading them that your way of addressing the issue, either through a product, a service, or some kind of organization of work, this is a program of some kind, this is the right way to go about doing it. So some traditional formal characteristics that you're going to see in a proposal. As I go through these, you're going to notice that in your specific formal proposal that you're writing for me, some of these are called different things, or they might be combined, or they might come in a different order, or I may not be having you do this at all. And I'm going to kind of point to that as I go down the list. But these are generally sections of a proposal that you might run into. So I wanted to show you what they were, especially if you're going into writing proposals outside of our class, which many of you will. So first you're going to have some kind of cover page, a title page that has information about the proposal, the name of the document or the proposal, the title, the name or names of people who are proposing, the title of the proposal, the date that you're proposing, and then if it's in reference to a specific request, if you've specifically been requested to write this, you may have some kind of note about that on the title page. You're then going to have an executive summary, which you have experience in working on that already. But as you know, this is a short summary of the actual proposal. You're probably going to specifically focus on the product or service and then how it meets the requirements and also exceeds expectations for it. So it's kind of the thing as well as its effects and its benefits. Getting into the actual document itself, you're first going to kind of start with some introductory material, and typically this is going to be the history of the product or service that you're proposing, or even the company. In our proposal, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. So the very first section is in part a background section and also a market analysis section, which you see as after the proposal. It's listed after the proposal here. But what that's doing is kind of really the point of the background and the point of this introductory material is to orient your reader to why this is an issue. It's that very beginning kind of persuasive act where you're saying that it's an issue in the first place and here's why. So then you're going to move into your actual proposal. This is your idea, and this is a detailed account of who, what, where, when, why, and how. Whatever it is that you're proposing, this is your description of it. In this, you might also, and I believe I have you guys doing this, you might also be doing a little bit of market analysis where you are laying out what other things are out there that could solve this problem, but also how your solution compares. The next and that's the market analysis. So the next section is going to be the benefits section, and this might be its own section. It might be a part of the conclusion, but this is laying out exactly why this is important. This is the so what aspect of this document. So you're going to be listing immediate benefits. You're going to be listing short-term and long-term benefits. And then you're going to move to a timeline. So this is the plan for how things are going to get done. When they're going to get done, you might include visual aids, but you're laying out the kind of step-by-step process from start to finish. You might have some kind of marketing plan, so how you're going to deliver the idea, product, or service, and that is dependent on the kind of thing that you're proposing. So for example, if in this assignment you are proposing some kind of change to workplace processes, for example, I would want to see something like this in the proposal section itself, showing exactly how you're going to kind of convince workers of this. I'm going to want to see some kind of plan for how you're going to market this publicly. Then you're going to go into a finance section. This is typically a budget. You want to list initial costs, one-time costs, long-term costs, and also maintenance costs. I am not having you all do this work, especially given the time that we have. I think this is something that you'll want to think about because you are going to be delivering your proposal to a person, but I'm not having you do that. I think if this becomes a proposal that your personal representative wants to carry out, you will have that conversation with them. So and then finally, we're going to have a conclusion, which is where you're restating your idea, you're tying everything together, and you're mentioning those benefits, the kind of so what aspect. So that's a proposal. You're going to have two types of proposals, which I've already mentioned. You're going to have solicited, which is where you've specifically been asked to submit a proposal. And this might be a request for a proposal, a request for a quotation, so kind of like a cost analysis, or, and I'm actually blanking on what the ITT, I think this has something to do with infrastructure changes. And they may specify the product or service that they're looking for. They want to give guidelines for the submission. And if you're doing some kind of cost bidding, this might be a situation where they're going. Your aim is to find the lowest cost to implementing your proposal. What you guys are doing is an unsolicited call. So this is a cold call proposal. As you have been in the midst of all of this already, you have reached out to someone at a company and you have decided to propose to them that there's an issue that can be addressed in this way. So it requires an understanding of the market, and it also requires an understanding of the company as well as the product or service you're proposing. So there's a lot that is required of you. A solicited proposal kind of already has it going for it, that it's something is wrong at the company, and so the company itself is saying we want to solve this problem. With the unsolicited, you're doing the added work of persuading them that there is an issue. So there's kind of that added element. So moving into talking about like how we go about researching and writing and organizing a proposal. A lot of this, again, is already stuff you've encountered before. Research, though, is your foundation here. So you're doing a lot of market research in this kind of step of the proposal. You may not go back to your personal representative and do a little bit more digging, but you have every right to. But for the most part, this is going to be you searching online or via databases. So the first step is to kind of narrow your topic. You have an idea of what you're supposed to be doing, meaning you're supposed to find a solution to the problem, but you need to narrow that down to figure out what exactly the solution is, and revisiting your purpose. Also revisiting the constraints that are your rhetorical situation, so thinking about the company, the time that you have, all of that. In this kind of narrowing, you want to start focusing on key points, and develop keywords from this process that you can use whenever you go in and start searching. So keywords are these phrases that are going to help you narrow down your research and get the information that you really want. So they need to be as specific as possible and as focused as possible. And another way you can do this is by brainstorming questions that can serve as your guidance. You want to use various sources, especially in a kind of proposal, not just popular, but you need to use scholarly and even news sources as well. Kind of getting at all different aspects, especially if your audience is unknown. You want to be able to use research that is scholarly in case that's the kind of knowledge they value, but you also want to use popular sources from Fortune magazine or news sites to kind of orient the context of this kind of problem. Um, as with any kind of reading, I highly suggest you read strategically. Read the abstract, read the labels for sections, read topic sentences, read the conclusion, and from there you can find out whether an article is useful and actually go dig a little bit deeper into it. Once you figure out that you think the research is useful, I would gather the citation as soon as possible because you are required to do that. And then just thinking about compiling research and what that means. And we've come across these words before, but I wanted to define them again for you. Sensitivity means an awareness of how you respond to the sources. Assimilation is where you are integrating the sources into your own ideas. Accommodation is where you're adapting or filtering new ideas into your previous experiences. Incubation is where things actually start to develop, ideas start to develop. Incorporation is the process by which you're bringing new ideas into the whole, which is a little bit different than the assimilation and accommodation, which is kind of your interaction with the text and with the sources. Production is, of course, actually creating the document, and revising is looking back and improving it. When you're writing these documents, you're also thinking about organization. My biggest thing to you is to begin with a thesis, and this may come after you're doing the research. You may not you may not begin with a specific idea. So at the very least, once you've started compiling all of your research, when you start writing, begin with that central idea. And that central idea in a proposal is the problem and the solution together. That's what you're going forth with. That's what you're going to organize everything around. You also want to think about organizing principles. So what are the basic elements of this thesis? When you break down that thesis into specific ideas, or also alternatively, knowing that you have specific sections that you have to address, how are you going to present these basic elements, these ideas, within that kind of construct, within that structure? When you're building your paragraphs, this may be something that you've lost since English 101, or you haven't, and this is very basic to you. But one of the basic ways that you can kind of start thinking about building your paragraph, building your arguments, you begin with a claim. You offer support. You explain the link between the claim and the evidence that you've described. So you're explaining, and then you conclude. You tie everything together. You might bring that explanation even back around to the claim again. Transitions, it's perhaps even more important in this assignment to be thinking about how each paragraph relates to each other. In the SWOT analysis, your structure is pretty built in. You know, one paragraph is one strength, another paragraph is another. But this is a little bit more kind of intuitive, what you're going to be doing. And then I want you to definitely think about the fallacy kind of pitfall that you can run into. This is especially the case when you are kind of solidifying your argument, saying this is a problem and here's the solution. So I want to just kind of go over some of the most common fallacies. The red herring is where you're using some argument, some piece of an issue to distract from the main issue. And often the red herring uses fear as a strategy. The straw man is similar. It's you're building a weak argument, and you're specifically setting it up to distract the other person, the audience, from the perhaps like something that's actually standing in the way of you making an argument. Begging the question is that you're claiming the truth as self-evident. So the kind of premises that you're building your argument off of, you're saying that they're self-evident when perhaps you need a little bit more research to back that up. A circular argument is similar. It's where the argument itself proves itself. So A equals B because B equals A. So you're building an argument on itself, and that's a weak foundation. Ad populum is saying that everybody does it, and so you should do it too. It's that kind of bandwagon fallacy. Ad hominem is attacking someone's character and saying that their argument is wrong because of it. A non sequitur is that the conclusion that you've made doesn't actually follow from the premises or the evidence that you've built. And finally, the post hoc ergo propter hoc. This is coincidence. These things are correlated, and therefore you should act on them when really they only correlate out of coincidence. So, this is how you can start building arguments. Start really like reflecting on what it is you're saying, what it is you're building your claim off of. And then finally, of course, one of the most fundamental differences between this and the SWOT analysis is the fact that you're using research. And there's really three strategies to do this: a paraphrase, a summary, and a quote. A lot of times students get really confused about the differences between these, so I wanted to specifically go over that. A paraphrase is where you're rewriting information in your own words, and you're specifically using segments of a source as opposed to the whole source. So the difference between paraphrase and summary is that a paraphrase is a smaller piece of a larger source. The summary is that you're presenting the key ideas of the entire source in your own words. So it's a matter, I guess, of size there. Paraphrase is a smaller bit of information. Summary is a larger bit of information. Both of these, despite the fact that you're not quoting directly, need to be cited. If you're taking information from anything, even if it's just rewriting it in your own words, you need to cite where that information came from. And finally, quote. Many of you guys have already been using quotes in your responses and things like that, but this is where you place language from a source in quotation marks and cite it. Specifically, I think students often confuse when they should use paraphrase versus when they should use quote. So in a paraphrase, you're rewriting a segment. In a quote, you're quoting that segment. So it's the same kind of size of information. But the difference between a paraphrase and a quote as far as when you should use them is that generally a paraphrase is when there's information that you want to get across to your audience. A quote is when there's language that you want to get across to the audience. So my general rule of thumb, though of course there are always exceptions, is that you paraphrase for information, you quote for language. And so I hope that kind of helps you understand when things should be used. And for all of these, again, I really want to stress that anytime you use information from another source, whether it's quoted or not, you should be citing it. And in this assignment, I believe I have asked you guys to use a citation style that is something you've used before. So I know in certain fields of business, Chicago style is what you use. I know also in other fields, APA style is what you use. And I do even believe that there's some fields that use MLA. So whatever you as a group are comfortable using, I'm not concerned about that as long as it is cited and that it's consistent citation. And that's all I have for today.